Good, beautiful morning, beautiful people. Alrighty, so we are, of course, if you've been joining us or following us, we are covering our Sutta, which is the second most important discourse in Buddhist meditation after the Anapanasati Sutra, or the mindfulness of breathing. And so, mindfulness of breathing, if we've covered last year several times, but last year most recently. And that covers our foundations of how we would master our concentration in meditation, right? Honing and perfecting our concentration, our focus. Whereas helping us master contemplation. So the two styles, I suppose, of Buddhist meditation is samatha and vipassana. Samatha is the concentration piece, which is mindfulness of breathing, and the vipassana, which is the satipatthana, or the four foundations, which is contemplation or insight meditation. And so since we've covered how to concentrate, or at least how to perfect our concentration, whether we've perfected it or not, hopefully it's good enough to continue, because you do need a strong foundation of concentration in order to do contemplation. Otherwise, your mind will be scattered and disorganized and will not be helpful on your meditative path. So we've already covered the first foundation, which is 4 classes, 5 classes, something like that, to cover the body, which is a very big topic. So we are on mindfulness of feeling, which is the second foundation. So last class we covered the entirety, and I will read out the exercises as it is stated by the Buddha in the sutra itself. So I'll start with exercise 11, and the Buddha tells us, whenever the practitioner has a pleasant feeling, he is aware, I am experiencing a pleasant feeling. Whenever he has a painful feeling, he is aware, I am experiencing a painful feeling. Whenever he experiences a feeling which is neither pleasant nor painful, he is aware, I am experiencing a neutral feeling. So exercise 11 is all about just identifying generally the feelings that are arising in the body, which is either going to be pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? Those are the 3 and only types of feelings that we would arise. And so we're being very general at this point, because the exercise, for the most part, in sequential order, right? Because as you go through the body, which is the easiest thing we can feel and sense, right? Because it's our body. We know what's going on, the movements, the conditions, the aches and pains, and all this other stuff. And so after we go through the feelings, what is happening with the feelings? How are we feeling with this body, right? And then after our feelings, what's connected to the feeling? Where are the feelings coming from? Which is the mind, right? And so we start to contemplate the mind and the objects of mind, which is the 4th foundation. And so as we're identifying feelings, the 11th exercise is just the general one. If you're feeling an ache because you're sitting or your feet are falling asleep, clearly that's a painful or unpleasant feeling, right? So we're being very general about it, very just, this is unpleasant. Then when we go into exercise 12 is being a little bit more specific. If you have been here before, encouraging people to question themselves and to practice why meditation, right? So anytime something arises in the mind, or it's a feeling or an emotion or whatever it is, always question well, that's not good enough. You ask again, why am I feeling this way? Not a good enough answer. So you continue to ask yourself why and why and why, until you get to the very core root cause of that issue. Because it's only at the root that we can have that aha moment and recognize the truth of that feeling or sensation or emotion or whatever it may be that we're having. Because simply saying I'm angry isn't good enough. Congratulations, everyone gets angry. You're not special. But what's causing? And so in exercise 12 kind of follows that same suit. So exercise 12, the Buddha says, when he experiences a pleasant feeling based in the body, he is aware I'm experiencing a pleasant feeling based in the body. When he experiences a pleasant feeling based in the mind, he is aware I'm experiencing a pleasant feeling based in the mind. When he experiences a painful feeling based in the body, he is aware I am experiencing a painful feeling based in the body. When he experiences a painful feeling based in the mind, he is aware I am experiencing a painful feeling based in the mind. When he experiences a neutral feeling based in the mind, he is aware I am experiencing a neutral feeling based in the mind. So in the last class, when I covered half of this, I covered the majority of the awareness of our pleasant feelings. So I'll continue today with the unpleasant and the neutral feelings, since those are a much longer discussion that I couldn't fit into the last class. To kind of summarize, I'm not very good at summarizing, because if you know me, I talk a lot. So I'm going to attempt to summarize the awareness of pleasant, and pleasant feelings are just that. They're pleasant. You want to have pleasant feelings. But there is a danger in pleasant feelings as well, right? And this isn't to say that we're not allowed to feel pleasant feelings, right? You have the right to experience pleasant feelings. However, most people, unfortunately, that are unpracticed or unmindful or unaware of reality may tend to grasp and attach to those pleasant feelings, right? Because in Buddhism, our biggest fault is the second noble path, right? Noble truth, right? There's 4 noble truths. The very first one is that in life there's suffering, or there's dissatisfaction. The second truth is that the cause of our suffering is desire, or the attachment or grasping of our desire. And that's the problem we have with pleasant feelings sometimes. It's because more and more and more, which doesn't do you any good, right? Because all you do now in life is just running after this thing or person that's giving you this pleasant feeling. And then you get it, and then depending on what it is or who it is, right? The pleasant feeling may disappear eventually. The thing or person may die or may break or go away. And so that object that gave you a pleasant feeling is gone. Now you suffer, and now you want it to go after it some more, right? And so it's this constant cycle of another point to that is, the example I brought up last time is even with praise, right? If someone praises us, that typically gives people a pleasant feeling, right? I'm like, oh, you did such a good job, that's amazing, this looks beautiful, blah, blah. I'm like, I know, thanks, I did it all by myself, or whatever it may be, right? There's that kind of positive, energetic feeling that is, in my opinion, also very dangerous. Because if we're unmindful and unaware, and we don't really question that praise, because if we do, if we look at that praise from the observation of mindfulness, we can see where that praise comes from. Is that praise coming from a place of flattery or reality, right? Because sometimes even the person praising you may have a sense of this kind of larger self or ego, like I'm important enough to give you praise, right? We don't typically do. And you're accepting that praise, which means I am good enough, right? So it's almost kind of like the sense of validation that you are good enough to accept, to give and receive this praise. That has a potentiality of boasting our ego, boasting our self-view of ourselves, of our identity. And so we really have to question that too, because if we don't, then again, we may accept that pleasant feeling from a place of ignorance, right? Even if that praise does come from a place of truth, right? And let's say they're praising you and you're like, yeah, obviously this is a good job, right? Let's say you won a Nobel Peace Prize or a Nobel Prize, right? And someone's praising you for it. I'm like, well, obviously I'm good enough to win this thing, right? You're not thinking like that, but it's coming from a place of truth. But still, that's still something that we need to also observe as well, right? Because again, if we don't observe it, if we don't allow it to, or if we don't allow ourselves to see it from the place of, and again, it's going to affect our ego, it's going to affect the way we see ourselves and the way we see the world. We don't want that either. Okay, that's all I'm going to talk about, pleasant feelings. But you get the point, right? Question is the point here. Then feelings we all experience, right? It's pretty hard to avoid unpleasant feelings. It's pretty hard to pretend like unpleasant feelings don't exist when they do occur. But unpleasant feelings, unlike pleasant feelings, because pleasant feelings, or all feelings, can come from a place of it's either psychological or physiological, right? Or physical. And pleasant feelings, though it has a huge impact psychologically, unpleasant feelings can impact all three, psychological, physiological, and physical. Because think of, I'm using anger as an example because it's something we've all experienced, right? Think of anger. What happens? Like, just think of a time where you were really, try to recall what was your mind going through? How was your body feeling? How is your presence in whatever environment or location that you were? How was all that combination of psychological, physiological, and physical attributes affecting yourself at the time? Actual pause for you to think. So if you go back to that moment, right? If you can recollect a moment of true anger, not true anger, but a moment of anger, it's very easy to recognize. It's easy to tell just from yourself, right? It's even easy to see it in others. When someone is angry, right? It's easy to see it according to their body language. And so if it's easy for us to see someone else's anger, then it must be much more easier to see our own anger, right? Except it's not. Because when we're angry, how often do we say, I'm so angry right now? I mean, you may have physically say the words, I'm so angry. But do you know you're angry? Or are you just going through the process of the situation, right? Most of the time, we're just going through the process of the situation. But if you're able to apply mindfulness and awareness to the situation of that anger, then we can apply the light of mindfulness, say, this is anger. And in, I'm aware that I am angry. Or breathing in, I'm aware that there's anger within me. Breathing out, I'm aware that there's anger within me. Because if you're sitting in meditation, we're about to sit in meditation in a bit, and we're going to focus on the mindfulness of feelings in this session. Just imagine you're sitting in meditation, right? You're observing your breathing, you're being mindful of the breath, and all of a sudden, stranger on the street, whatever, arises. And you're recalling the situation, you're recalling the conversation, you're recalling the whole scuffle that you're having with this person, right? And you're remembering what they said, you're remembering what they did, you're remembering what you said, or if you're mindful enough, you'll be able to notice these subtle changes within the body and mind of that simple thought of anger. Because what happens when we're angry? What happens physically to our brain? Then we start to sweat because we're just so angry. But the mind's like, you know what? Let's sweat it out, right? You can start to sweat, you start to get angry, you start to get red, you get all heated and flushed, right? Your body tenses up and your breathing changes. And so it's very easy to notice these changes of anger within the body. Nothing's happening, you're just sitting there in meditation. But all of a sudden, you have 5 million things changing from the simple thought of this anger. So see how much power anger has? How much power this memory. But unfortunately, we're weak-minded people. We're unenlightened. So we don't have the power to necessarily stop that in its tracks sometimes. But that's why we practice, right? But anyway, so if we're sitting in meditation, our body is calm, our breath is calm, it's subtle, it's shallow as it should be within practice, but all of a sudden that moment of anger arises, and you start to feel the body tense a little bit, right? You're kind of just squishing your whole body. You're thinking of, oh, I should have said this. You're thinking of comebacks. You're thinking of acts of revenge or whatever it may be, right? Now your mind is out there in la la land, and your body's over here. So now there's a disconnect. Now your mind's out there in the past for something that's already happened, something you can go back and change, right? We don't have time machines. If you do, I need to borrow one because there's a lot I want to change. But we don't, so there's no point to slave over this false memory. It's not false memory, but it's this memory of anger. But that's how much power it has. And so if you really want to master your meditation, then you have to admit to yourself, well, this is stupid. The mind and breathing, you're giving it so much power for something that's useless. It's unchangeable, right? So another kind of big topic in Buddhism is impermanence, right? And it is the most helpful, the most enlightening realization one can have. I love impermanence. I love that things die. I love that change exists. Because if it did a single thing in this entire universe that will last forever as it is, things will last for a very long time, right? This building may last for a few hundred years before it collapses, maybe, right? These balloons that we had last weekend for our holiday, some of them are already popped and were shrunken, right? The flowers are wilting and dying. Things change. Then nothing would change, and we wouldn't enjoy things, right? The only way we can enjoy life and reality is by accepting that change exists, that change occurs. Otherwise, you'd just be stuck with the same thing every day for the rest of your life. But within our meditation, when anger arises, for instance, we have to apply the power of impermanence to it too. We have to recognize and allow ourselves to accept that this feeling of anger is impermanent, right? Any feeling that arises, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, is always impermanent because nothing ever stays forever, right? You may wake up this morning feeling refreshed and ready for the day. I don't. I guess we can still use that example, but that same feeling, right, doesn't last throughout the day. It doesn't, right? Because throughout the day, then you get hungry, then you get a little bit tired. Maybe at one point you get excited or sad or whatever it may be, right? And so things change. Likewise, our anger that arises during meditation, or any other feeling, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, is also important. Then we can just take it for what it is, accept it, and let it go on. Just let it fall off. Because in meditation, when we're concentrating on our object of meditation, which is usually the breath, and a thought arises, a distraction arises, one of everybody. One arises, and you're going to entertain it. You're going to play with it. You're going to go along with it. You're going to hold on to it for as long as you hold on to it. You're unmindful of the distraction. You may get to a point where like, oh crap, I'm distracted. I need to go back to my object of meditation, right? So that's one scenario. The other scenario is when you're aware and you notice it, you're aware and you notice it, right then and there. The good thing about our mind, as unenlightened as it is, when a distraction or a thought arises during meditation, all we have to do is simply just recognize it, and it will magically just go away on its own, right? We don't have to force it out of our mind. The simple recognition of a distraction or a thought that arises during meditation is enough to push it out of our meditation session. So that's when we meditate. Labeling is very important because we have to, labeling is a form of recognition of these thoughts and distractions that arise. So if you're sitting in meditation and you may be thinking about what you want to eat, where you want to eat, you want to cook, you want to go get something, you want to pick something up, right? You're creating either a grocery list or a list of where you want to go, right? But if you now, it may take some time for some people to recognize those thoughts, right, and to put a label on it. As I always said, the object of meditation isn't to have a clear mind of thinking nothing, right? And when I hear random people say, oh, just sit down and clear your mind. Who the hell told you to clear your mind? You'll never hear me say, sit down and clear your mind. Don't think of anything. It's the stupidest advice I've ever heard in my life. Because obviously, that's not something that we can just naturally do, right? Our mind has a habit. Its function is to think, right? So it's nearly impossible to be able to know that you're thinking, right? The goal of meditation is to learn about our mind. Meditation, Buddhism in general, is very psychological, right? We're trying to figure out what's going on in the mind, how the mind works, why it works the way it works, right? That's the only way we're going to liberate ourselves, is to recognize the causes of suffering and to eradicate those causes of suffering. That's it. It's an internal real. None of that is as helpful as sitting down and trying to contemplate the mind, which is the entirety of this practice. The 4 foundations of mindfulness is exactly that. The 4 foundations of mindfulness, practicing when you attain enlightenment. So we know for a fact that by practicing and realizing, truly penetrating and having that realization of the 4 foundations is enough to become enlightened. It's not chanting, it's not praying, it's not doing this, it's not doing that. It's not good enough. The externalities of our life is not good enough for enlightenment. Is the observation of the mind, the recognition of our suffering, and the eradication of those sufferings. I went way off topic. I'm so sorry. That's the point of anger. It is that it is easy to recognize, at least during meditation, right? Even if you don't recognize anger in itself, as itself in meditation, if you're at least aware enough that in the body and in the breathing is changing, that should be enough of a recognition that something is happening, right? You may not be able to apply a label on it just yet, but if you're mindful enough, because if you're meditating and your focus is good enough, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect concentrators just yet. But if your meditation or your session is good enough, your breathing is going to be calm and subtle. And so if we use that as our base and we continue on our meditation, then something occurs in the mind, distraction, an emotion, a feeling, whatever it may be. If we're mindful enough, we can recognize the breathing, right? And so that subtle change in breathing should be the first sign that something is happening in the mind, right? And so at that point, if you're able to recognize that subtle change in the breathing, good, you've caught it early on, right? So it's kind of like, it's a bad example, but it's kind of like catching cancer before it's a big deal, right? You can eradicate it and get rid of it before it turns into an actual problem. But if you don't, it starts to change, right? If it's anger, then the body starts to tense up. Maybe you start to adjust yourself a little bit more because you're trying to, right? Usually when we're angry, we're like, we just want to like just plant ourselves into the ground. And so you'll notice, right? Just be aware of what is happening. That is the entirety of the mindfulness of body, is to recognize those extremely subtle changes that we don't necessarily recognize in our everyday life. It's recognition, awareness of what is happening during meditation. So if you're sitting down and you're meditating, you're distracted, that's fine. Your mind's doing what it's supposed to do. What's not fine is if you are distracted and you don't recognize the distraction, that's a failed meditation session. If you recognize a distraction has arisen, or thoughts or emotions or opinions or whatever it may be has taken over your object of meditation, it doesn't matter how long it takes you to recognize that. It can take you a few seconds, it can take you a few minutes, it can take you the entire session of your sitting meditation. As long as you've recognized and became aware of that distraction, you are 100% doing exactly hours, I don't care. But as long as you made that recognition, the awareness that you've become distracted, you're on your way to becoming a Zen master. I'm not kidding, that's how it works, right? Because again, meditation is about just saying, think of nothing. What are you doing? If you're thinking about nothing, what are you doing? Meditation isn't a passive thing. It's not a hobby. It's not something you can just do randomly whenever you feel like it, right? There's a point to meditation. There's an object. There's a goal. So we have to apply that mindset to every session correctly. Then you go through the process of recognition and mindfulness. Okay, I'm running out of time. Okay, that's unpleasant feelings. Now, the hardest feeling, which is neutral feelings, is the least recognizable, right? Because generally speaking, painful or unpleasant feelings are much. They don't have a much substance sometimes. But our body is think of it as a river of feelings, right? And every drop of water in this river is either a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling. So as we sit in meditation, we watch this flow of river water within us go by, and we can recognize pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Because sometimes when we do have a neutral feeling, we're thinking that we don't have a feeling at all, right? Because we think it's neutral. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just neutral. But a neutral feeling is a feeling, right? It doesn't mean the non-existence of feeling, because a neutral feeling is a feeling. Not feeling is a feeling. So comfort, unpleasant feeling. But when that toothache or headache is no longer there, and then we think we don't have a feeling anymore, But we do have a feeling, and that feeling is neutral, right? Again, it's not a pleasant feeling, it's not a painful feeling, it's just empty. It's a neutral feeling. Pleasant feelings, right? It has the power, we have the power to see those neutral feelings as pleasant feelings. And so when we have a toothache and we're thinking, oh, this is such a painful feeling, or a headache, this is such a painful feeling, and we wish that would stop, right? And then it does stop, and we're like, oh, finally, I have no pain, right? And so now we have a feeling of a non-toothache or non-headache. Of mindfulness, we can acknowledge that not having a toothache is a pleasant feeling, right? Would you rather have a toothache all day? Would you rather have a headache all day? I would hope not. So not having a toothache or not having a headache all day should be a pleasant feeling. Think of just coming to this class, for instance, right? Some of you may enjoy this environment, this atmosphere of serenity and calm and quietude, and it's sun shining, spring flowers, right? We can enjoy this calm environment. But then somebody else who's experiencing the same environment that you're in, right, goes at it from a neutral feeling that may potentially turn into an unpleasant feeling because now they're bored, right? I'm like, ugh, this isn't pleasant for me, right? But they're in the exact same environment as you. And so what they do with their bored, right? And so we can recognize those potential neutral feelings that arise in these environments of quietude. Because to me, it's a beautiful day, it's sunny, it's fresh, it's quiet for the most part, right? So to me, that's pleasant. And if we all got there and sit down for a little bit, I hope it'll be pleasant for all of us. But after a while, that pleasant feeling may turn into neutral feelings. Because then you may think, all right, well, it's getting late, or it's getting too warm, or there's too many flies around, or these temple cats are annoying because they're just jumping on me, right? And so now your pleasant feelings turns into neutral feelings, and you continue on with the thought process of all these excuses. Now it turns into an unpleasant feeling. Then, right? Why did an environment that for most people I would go in and share that with you is completely pleasant, then you've turned it into such an unpleasant feeling? But unfortunately, we're the same, right? When we don't have a pleasant or unpleasant feeling, naturally we feel neutral. So, but if we don't know how to deal with that or manage those neutral feelings, right, that'll turn into an unpleasant feeling. But if we know how to manage it, then it will become a pleasant feeling, and a feeling of well-being, a feeling of calmness and acceptance. So every neutral feeling, technically, if we hold it in the light of mindfulness and awareness, will become a pleasant feeling. Feelings is the concept in Buddhism of non-duality, right? Because for Buddhism, there's non-duality is very important, just as important as the concept of impermanence. Because non-duality is subjective for most people, right? Things are black and white, good or bad, yes or no, beautiful or ugly, tall or short, etc., right? But all those feelings are simply perceptions, right? Your perception of this temple, this class, me, everyone else in here, is one way of thinking, but it can be completely different for somebody else. The example I use all the time is if we go outside and look at the sky and look at the clouds and try to figure out what shapes it looks like, we're all going to have completely different ideas of what this one same cloud that we're all looking at looks different to all of us. To me, it looks like a smiley face. To somebody else, it looks like a cat. Someone else looks like a car. Someone else looks like nothing, right? So if we all have these different perceptions of what this cloud looks like, then who's right and who's wrong? Right? We can't all be right and we all can't be wrong. I take that back. We all are right and we all are wrong. But that's how we should look at the world. Wrong. Right? Your perceptions are based entirely of your experiences in life, of how and when and where you grew up, how, when, and where your livelihood was in, the environment, the friends, the family, the schools, the jobs, everything that you've ever experienced in life has created all the perceptions, all the ideas and opinions and biases and discrimination that you hold today. And so it's analyzing, it's dissecting those perceptions, it's dissecting those opinions and thoughts and biases and discriminations. Why do I have them? Why do they occur? Why do they influence my ideas or perceptions of this person, place, or thing? Why do I feel like that? Why do I believe in this? You have to question, right? The power of questioning is so important in meditation because that's the only way we can start to break down all the things that cause us suffering in life, all the things that are blocking our questioning. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking for once. So that is mindful of feeling, of our of our positive, pleasurable, unpleasurable, and neutral feelings. Questions, concerns? Leon.
So in the second level of truth, we understand that there's causes for suffering, there are causes for unpleasantness. And the first level of truth is in life, to follow your thought, in life there are unpleasant feelings and there are pleasant feelings, right?
Correct.
So that's a truth. And we're going to experience one, we're going to experience the other. But isn't it like anything else? We become that feeling, and then we spend the rest of the day in a funk, and we're not even sure why.
Right.
It's the same way, right? So it's not we work to not have unpleasant feelings because we're going to have them. True?
Correct. Right. This isn't saying don't have unpleasant feelings, right? Just like like when I mentioned meditation, it's not about not thinking, but it's about knowing that you're thinking. Likewise, when we have a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling, it's not about not having them and those feelings take over you versus you trying to take over those feelings. Because as Leon just mentioned, if something unpleasant happened to you, maybe on your drive over here or if you leave here, right? Someone pisses you off on the road, right? Cuts you off or does whatever. Now you're angry. Now for the rest of the day, you're going to be angry because this one idiot caused you such an unpleasant feeling. Well, you're allowing it to cause you an unpleasant feeling, and you're allowing it to linger because you're taking it for what it is. But in reality, we have to do more than that. Because otherwise, as I'm just mentioning, I'm in a funk all day because you're allowing it to take over and over again, how that person cut you off or flipped you off or whatever it may be. Right? Just the other day, I was having lunch with my sister, and she came and picked me up and took me to lunch. She got angry at the road, and the whole time she was just talking about this person that was tailgating her. I'm like, whatever, they're long gone, right? They're already on the other side of the city, and you're still over here. I'm like, does that make sense to you? Like, why are you allowing that to influence you so much that now all we're talking about is this dumb person cutting you off or tailgating you? And then I drove on the way back because I was like, I don't want more of your negativity. I drove on the way back. And when I was driving the way back, I guess I was behind, I have a bigger car. And so smaller cars behind me can't really see in front of me, but I was stuck behind the smaller car. And so I couldn't pass or I couldn't go. The smaller car behind me kept on tailgating me. I'm like, dude, do it whatever you want. If you hit me, great. I can use a new car. I don't mind. But then eventually they are able to pass me and they rolled down the window, flipped me off. That wasn't very monkly of me. But like the difference between the two responses is obvious. Entire drive to the restaurant, whereas I was like, all right, someone flipped me off. So sad for you. I don't care. You just let it go. Not to say I'm any better than her, but if we're able to recognize those types of things that occur and just accept it for what it is and not take it and hold on to it, then it's not going to influence you. It's not going to put you in a funk. It's not going to have you cause a bad day. Because oftentimes, because we are not the masters of our mind, right? We think we are, but we're not. Because we're not the masters of our mind, we are 100% responsible for every single reaction that we have in life. No one, no thing, not happiness or unhappiness. Freaking love it. I'm not even joking. Ask Quang. I love it when people insult me or do whatever, because that's such offend me, and they insult them back, right? They try to retaliate. They try to have a comeback. They try to put that person down or whatever because someone insulted you. Well, congratulations. But that insult has zero power in and of itself. The only power it has is the power you give it, right? Same thing with words, same thing with language. Language is just a whole bunch of squiggly lines, right? It has no power. But we give these words on you. Again, this is why mindfulness is so important. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. Question.
We have the pleasant, unpleasant, and useful.
No, because that would still be a feeling.
So that falls into the neutral category.
Not feeling is still a feeling, right? Non-hunger is the absence of hunger. But hunger in itself has to disappear. Then there would be no this or that. There can't be beautiful and ugly. The whole concept is pure.
It's sadness. It's more just like
Well, unhappiness is just the absence of happiness. Happiness is the absence of unhappiness. Just think of going to the mall and you're passing by just window shopping and you see a Rolex, for instance, at the watch shop. You're like, ooh, I want this Rolex, right? Now you've planted a desire for this Rolex. But if you never went to the mall, then you would have never seen the Rolex, and then your desire for that Rolex, if it's in itself, has to not exist for the feeling of it to not exist, if that makes any sense. But since we live in a world of duality, right, it's either this or that, and that's what we have to try to escape from.
I would say like, see the role of duality. Sometimes like we and kind of like you were saying earlier, we keep doing something useless. So that is a feeling. Maybe that's like we are wasting our energy, time, doing something like pain healing,
right?
Something like that. So that will come as kind of like feeling, but it's not like we are not thinking about it. A lot of people end up doing that mundane things, which shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So, so if I
right? In
So I can be not unhappy, and I can also be not happy.
right,
At the same time.
right, right.
Which is neutral.
Which is neutral, which we still need to acknowledge, right?
And as long as I'm human, I'm going to go one way or the other. The idea is not to live all the way on one side and all the way on the other. Is that our middle path?
Yes and no. Mostly yes. But it can also be no because, as I mentioned, every neutral feeling can be a pleasant feeling too, right?
Does it have to modify and become pleasant, or it was neutral and now all of a sudden it's pleasant?
Feeling, right? So neutral is kind of like the default setting.
And it's I know I'm not happy. I know I'm not happy.
Right, you just are. But then our practice is to, well, instead of just being just is, right? Well, let's try to change it into pleasant, just mundane, from a like walking to your car, for instance, right? Walking to the car is just a mundane activity. Like I'm just walking to my car. It's a neutral feeling. But if we're able to shed light of mindfulness on this, well, the act of walking can be very pleasant. Because if we apply mindfulness to it, then we can be like, okay, it's such a beautiful day. There's a nice breeze. The sun's out. I have 2 functioning feet and legs to walk to my car. I have into positive feelings naturally, and then we can naturally always be in a positive mindset. Correct. Correct. As long as we don't attach to it.
Then it goes away, and then we're unpleasant.
Correct. Exactly. Yes, sir.
What about kind of more of a major traumas? How would you say we should deal with things like a person steals your children, person steals, you were talking about trying to get to the core of things and find the why and go forward from there?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm a part of the book.
That's so there are gonna be everything has a root cause, regardless of what it is, right? But the root cause is not always obvious or easy to get to, right? There's a been sitting on that I've been meditating on since August of last year, right? I'm constantly pulling away the layers of this onion, right? Just like an onion that has multiple layers you have to peel away. This problem that I'm having, or not problem, but this issue, this whatever's going on with me is so deeply ingrained. That's taken me this entire time. I still have not gotten to the root cause of it. So when we do why meditation to get to the root cause right away, potentially, it could take some time, it can do this and do that. But when things involve like trauma, for instance, that has a pretty, or can have a very deeply rooted cause, right? Especially if it's something that's happened in childhood or, you know, even an adult, someone gets raped or kidnapped or whatever it may be. Trying to go about it from a why perspective, it's not going to be easy. It also may not even be necessary. He should be asking himself, why am I raping? Right? And so at this point, it becomes not a why, but it becomes now, it shifts from a perspective of why this happened to me to how can I resolve these feelings of, or resolve this trauma, right? It's a very big topic. It's a very good question. I have a very long answer.
Quick way to resolve, like when I run into some situation like that, think of as a cause and action. Everything is cause and action. And if you go through that process, you look at there was some cause, something I was involved, I did in this life, or I can even feel like a different life cycle.
Previous lives.
Something I did that caused me this issue. So that's like resolves, what happens resolving those aspects of the concept that we receive in our
Mm. I would agree with you when it comes to karma. I mean, obviously, I'm a monk, so I don't have to believe in karma, but I do believe in karma, right? I do believe in cause and effect. I do believe in karma of past lives. But if we take away the concept of past lives and just think of karma as cause and effect in this present life, everything that we have ever done has a cause. Them all, then the desire for world could never ever occurred. Not this, that's a bad example. I'm trying to think of a good example. Okay, I'm going to say something that's it's a terrible thing to say. I apologize in advance, but this is to you, right? In my belief, it's because it's a karmic debt being paid, right? Because everything is a cause and effect, right? This is a universal law. Cause and effect is a universal law. It's not something that's made up. It's not something that an entity or a deity controls, right? If I throw this up into the air, it's going to fall down, right? So all our thoughts, speech, and actions work in the very next life, or karma that's going to affect you in any future life. And so it may take some time, right? The same way, depending on how heavy and how hard I throw this up into the air, that's going to calculate how fast and how long it's going to fall, right? The farther up this goes into the sky, the longer it's going to take to touch the ground, right? So karma works in the same way. Depending on the severity of the power of the throwing, it may take a few seconds, minutes, years, or decades for it to fall back down. Same way, whatever bad has that kind of goes back to, well, if you did something bad, like raping or getting raped or murdered or whatever it may be, well, simple act of return. It's a powerful act of return. It's a power of it's a transfer of energy, basically. So instead of trying to think, oh, this really bad thing has happened to me, and thinking that I didn't deserve that or that person didn't deserve that, well, no, right? Nobody deserves anything bad. Nobody deserves anything good either. Way or from that light, then whatever happens, good, bad, or neutral, it is what it is, right? It just is. That is the reality of things. Big topic. I'm going to stop right there because I can go on and on. Yes, sir.
I think it's really interesting that you use gravity in light of the fact that they just pretty much determined that gravity is not a special force that independent. It's actually part of space-time.
Right.
Space-time.
Right.
So it's a part of all that is.
Right.
And so when space-time curves, it causes gravity.
Exactly. That's why I love space stuff. All right, we're going to stop right there, and we're going to do our now much shorter than anticipated sit. So do a quick stretch if you need be. Use a session of walking meditation as well. sit down. Welcome back. Is everyone enlightened? Any last minute questions, concerns, emotional outbursts about your feelings today, if any, which I'm sure there were many? Yes, ma'am. Sorry, say that again? Why not? No. It'll just put you in a better mood. I mean, think about when you are joyful or experiencing pleasant feelings. Does that in itself not feel better than not feeling those feelings? Mm-hmm. Because to be joyful versus being unjoyful, for instance, if you aren't I mean, think about, okay, think about this universal idea of Buddhist monks, for instance. For someone who isn't Buddhist or doesn't practice Buddhism or has nothing, and does very little about Buddhism, most people have this concept that Buddhist monks are always happy and peaceful and joyful and just the most serene people on earth, right? And so people look at that as like, oh, that must be nice, right? But, or not but in that kind of mindset, then when you are put into situations that are not happy, serene, and joyful, you are more likely to attack that situation in a more correct way, right? Because if say you're in a bad mood and someone yells at you, naturally you're in a bad mood, you're like, well, you know what? I'm gonna get in a worse mood now, right? So you want to insult you and you're like, whatever, right? With my example with my sister driving, she wasn't in the best mood at all, and so she allowed someone tailgating her to affect that 15-minute drive. Whereas to me, I'm like, whatever. Someone flipped me off. That's great. Thanks for it. You want a picture? You want a selfie? I'll take a selfie while you're flipping me off. That's fine. I'm down for that. So it's a way you're able to objectively look at things that is going to help you influence your reaction to those things. Exactly. Mostly not. Because it's not doing anything. A neutral feeling isn't doing anything. It's just stagnant water. We say that the 3 jewels are protection, right? The Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is our protection. And those that take precepts or take refuge in the 3 jewels are protected. Why are we protected? Because we use the 3 jewels as a protection, meaning that we use the Dharma, the teachings that we know how to be mindful and aware of our feelings, and we can use that as protection toward whatever situation is happening. So if we're in a positive to it without wanting to run after it some more, and if we're in a negative or heated argument or unwholesome situation, then we know how to deal with that without retaliating in the same way. Or if we're in a neutral situation, then we just see it for what it is, right? So having the correct mindset state is going to help you in your activities, everyday life.
But you have to avoid karma issues, not that does it also help your karma, your current karma? It doesn't like help past karma, or is it going to help past karma too?
It's going to help not create more you can't erase karma, but what you can do is stop the cycle and overwhelm the bad karma with good karma, right? If I have another bottle of water, right, and I put salt in one, right? Let's just say put some salt in here, right? If I just put this little bit of water and try to taste it, it's still going to taste salty. But the more water I add, the less salty it is. But that doesn't mean the salt is gone. The salt is still there, but there's so much water to overpower that you don't. But the only way you're going to get rid of that bad karma is to put more good karma to assuage it. Plus, why would you want to be an influence to others, right? We know that if you're in a good mood, then you're interacting with other people, they absorb that good mood that within you. They absorb that same energy. If you go into work or to see a friend and you're in a bad mood and
Yeah, scientifically, like if you think of positivity and good mood. So, first of all, I would say the most common question was most of us like and say happy. We need the body, we need this, and in order to notice the body, we need food and we need happiness. So food and happiness, two things you need to survive. If you're not happy, you can be dull, sick. To stay neutral, scientifically or neurologically, you would be a little bit kind of like dull, and body would be very exhausted.
I'm going to use examples of video game. Video game. Most people will go in and adjust the settings to their liking. They won't keep the default settings because the default settings are boring or low quality. You want to go in and change it so you have better graphics, you have better sound, you have better movement, etc., etc. And think of neutrality as tasteless food. Would you rather have tasteless food, or would you have something that's actually pleasant to eat?
Without the vitamin and minerals.
Right. You're not for you, but if
so there's the catch, like no feeling without
yeah,
without the head. So there's the catch.
very true. All right. Even with neutrality, we have to be careful as to why we want to change it to pleasant. Right? Do you want to change it pleasant because it feels pleasant, or because it should be pleasant? Right? Same way I mentioned, when you don't have a toothache, you want to turn that into a pleasant feeling because it's pleasant to not have a toothache. Not having a toothache should be pleasant, right? But if we're neutral and we just forget about never having a toothache, or not thinking that not having a toothache is a bad thing or a good thing, then when it does occur, when it does happen, it feels like our world is falling apart because we can't do anything.
You brought awareness into the idea of, I don't know what the question is, but
will come from nowhere, right? You need to apply mindfulness and awareness to things in order for it to be either happy or unhappy or neutral, right? So the awareness itself is what's giving the situation power, not the actual pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral essence of it, right? It's how you see things. Maybe you like toothaches. I don't know. Some people want toothaches because then they can go get medication and then just get hooked on the medication, right? Some people want to be hurt. Some people want to have pain, so they can go to the doctor and get some drugs. I hope we don't do that, but it's a thing. All right, so we are way over time, and I apologize for that. So that concludes mindfulness of feeling. Mindfulness of mind is going to be very long as well, so I'll probably spend at least three to four classes on that alone on my phone. But we will be at full day retreat. So just keep an eye on that. I don't have the exact date just yet. So that's TBA. If you join us for tomorrow's service at 12:30, since I finished the chapter 4 in the Dhammapada, usually every time I finish a section or chapter or topic, I'll do a Q&A session. So tomorrow we'll have a Q&A session for my Dharma talk. So if you have any questions, general Buddhist questions, or questions on meditation or anything, tomorrow will be a good opportunity for you to ask those questions. And the following week, we will start on chapter 5 of tomorrow's Sunday, right? Tomorrow's Q&A session for Dharma talk, 12:30, and then pending our summer retreat toward the end of June. It's either going to be the 3rd or either the last Saturday of June or the 2nd to last Saturday. I don't know how many, depends on how many Saturdays there are in June. So I'll double check. So we will transfer the merit and then end this class. Please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni.